What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, I'm the Side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, are Tad the Side. And Tad, it was a disappointing weekend for me football-wise, with the exception of, surprisingly, college football. San Jose State got a big win against New Mexico State, against the Lobos. But other than that, like, fantasy-wise, it was disastrous. The Niners lost. They're not undefeated anymore, and that was just not the prettiest game anyways. Even if they won that game, I wouldn't have been happy with them winning that game either. So, yeah, very interesting weekend for me football-wise. I think for you, it was
a goddamn disaster.
It was awful. Yeah, exactly.
It was terrible. It was terrible. Okay, so let's just go over everything that happened. The only good thing, like you said, same deal as TCU. We were going into a 4-1, 3-1, a BYU team that was looking really scary. We mopped the floor with them with a new quarterback. So TCU did pretty well. So I'm riding high into Sunday. Okay. Not only do my Colts lose, and Gardner Minshew looked terrible. I don't know if you saw the highlights. He threw some real ducks. Like, all the interceptions were straight to the Jags players. Like, it was like, I think he got confused of like, you're no longer a Jacksonville Jaguar, man.
Yeah,
stop throwing to the blue
uniform. A couple years ago. That's not
Good
anymore.
God. So that sucked. And then on top of that, so on the fantasy team I care about the most, I have your boy, Christian McCaffrey, who was, like you said, who was struggling a little bit. So he had 12 points through about 3 quarters. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. He's still good for a touchdown. Then he gets hurt.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm still in a close game. And I got a good running back going in the late game, so I'll be all right. It was David Montgomery.
Yeah, he also got hurt later in that game too, which we'll get to at the top of this episode. But just, yeah, it is rough for sure.
Hate football. Football, I texted this to a friend a couple hours ago. Football exists only to hurt us. and he was a Bears fan, and he is a Bears fan, so he very much related to that.
Exactly. So yeah, we'll get to the Bears as well.
Speaking of the Bears, they screwed me. I went 0 for 3 on bets. Like, it was just...
Yeah, I didn't even talk about bets, but yeah, I went 1 for 3 on bets. So yeah, that didn't work out for me as well.
The one time I backed up Chicago, the one time I believed in them.
Yeah, so it was rough. It was rough for sure. But turn over a new leaf. So yeah, let's put this weekend behind us, Tad. You know, we're recording here on a Monday night.
Really,
so
turn over after I just brought up Gardner Minshew.
Well, you know, were you really that optimistic about the season anyways?
No, and Jacksonville always owns us. So it's just like, whatever.
If anything, like I said, you should be a little bit more optimistic that now the Colts will end up with a high-level pick, and that will supplement.
No, and I've been saying that for a while.
Anthony Richardson next year, right?
Yep. Get him a tackle.
Maybe some Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe some Olu Fashanu from Penn State.
Don't do that. Don't give me hope.
Pretty nice.
Oh my God, Marvin Harrison Jr. on the Colts. That'd be awesome.
I don't think.
Okay, now I'm in a better mood. Okay, yeah. This is like just a thought that has me giddy.
But yeah, then getting a top 10 pick, I think, could help the Colts next year for sure too. Give Anthony Richardson some protection or another weapon. So we'll see about that there. But yeah, let's sort of turn the chapter on week 6 here, Tad. Let's close it all out. Head into week 7 here. We only had 2 teams on a bye week in week 6 here, Tad, but we got 6 teams on a bye week this week.
Brutal.
So this is a pretty critical week. Like, I mean, you really need to make sure that you're hitting the waiver wire hard. We're going to give you our waiver wire picks a little bit later in the episode. Tad's going to weave his picks in, as we sort of give up the injuries from this past weekend here. But yeah, just to go over the bye weeks, we got the Cincinnati Bengals on a bye, the Dallas Cowboys, the Tennessee Titans, the New York Jets, the Carolina Panthers, and the Houston Texans. So we got 6 teams on a bye week. Lots of those teams there. Got some good fantasy players on them. So yeah, make sure you adjust your rosters accordingly. And let's get into this. We got a lot of injuries to get to here, Tad. Some big names here.
So many.
You touched on a couple of these already. Let's sort of start here with, my 49ers, unfortunately, dealing with 2 big injuries.
I almost texted you of like this always, you guys need to fire your trainer. I don't know if it's even the same trainer, but like, how does the injury bug get you year after year after year? It's like watching me as an NFL team.
I think unfortunately it's just it's not anything that the traders could do it because
No,
we talked
obviously, I'm
about this.
kidding. Don't fire the
Yeah,
trainer. I'm sure
but
he or she is a nice person.
this has happened before, like even before the recent regime with Kyle Shanahan. There's been like a string of just unfortunate injuries that happens with the team, and they've come out with articles that said like there's nothing so much that the traders can do. It's just unforeseen circumstances that just lead to these things that just like they do all these training, they do the stretches, that just unfortunately these things happen. But luckily, here's the big thing: is just they're not serious injuries. So let's start with Deebo Samuel, wide receiver for San Francisco 49ers, left the game against the Cleveland Browns in the first quarter. So he barely played in this game with an apparent shoulder injury. He was immediately taken to the sidelines. They put him in the blue medical tent to evaluate him. Shortly thereafter, they took him to the the locker rooms. He was already on the sidelines, but they took him back to the locker room to examine him further. Immediately right after, they ruled him out for the game. This would be a big blow if he has to miss a lot of time, but from reports that I'm seeing from today, after further results and further testing, it seems like he's going to be day to day. So they're avoiding serious injury with his shoulder injury, but we'll see what happens. They do play on Monday night, so they do get the extra day to sort of like recover, hopefully get some more tests in, really make sure that he's good to go. But in case he has to miss any time, it's looking like maybe a week at the most. It's not going to be like season ending or like 4 to 6 weeks or anything like that. It's looking like he avoided major injury. But in his place, in case you do need to find a spot start here, streaming option, Ray McCloud. He's actually their special teamer. He's their returner. But Tad, when Deebo Samuel went out, he played 44 out of 62 offensive snaps for the San Francisco 49ers. So he could be that jet sweep guy. He'll sort of, maybe a little bit of the running as well. Really depends there. But mainly he'll be that replacement for Deebo Samuel in case Deebo Samuel can't go on Monday against the Minnesota Vikings. But it's looking like he should be able to play. But we'll see how this week sort of goes and the practice week goes and how he's feeling.
And this is a common question I get from a lot of my friends. And I like I said, I'm a Christian McCaffrey manager. And so I'm kind of facing this, concern as well of like, it's really hard because if you take that gamble and you start players that are questionable heading into Monday night, obviously if they're ruled out, then all of a sudden your options are extremely limited. The best advice I can, because I know conventional wisdom kind of goes towards your suggestion of, just take that dude's replacement. The problem is, you need to make that call by Wednesday because that guy is probably off the waivers by then. So actually, I kind of go against conventional wisdom of like, just go for his replacement. Where look at the Sunday night game and like think about, okay, who there could have a big night in Sunday night, which by the way, next week is Miami, Philadelphia. That game is going to be so good. I cannot wait for that. But point being is, I think that as long as you do two things, one, you get a solid name, Braxton Berrios being a solid receiver that has some breakout potential. He may not like absolutely blow you away, but kind of play around with your lineup a bit. And two, you've got to keep up to date with those updates because most of the time by Friday, it's pretty clear, even for Monday night players, which way they're leaning. Now, sometimes it's not always the case, but I'm telling you, as long as you keep up to date and on Friday, if it's truly still doubtful, then I say just go ahead and risk it. Even if they do play, just bench them for somebody that is playing Sunday that you really like. So I actually say go for the Friday pickup to as an insurance policy. And maybe, they don't really practice on Saturday, but occasionally news alerts will come out on Saturdays also kind of breaking that. So I think the biggest thing is you just got to keep up to date with those updates because you miss just one, all of a sudden your entire lineup is in flux.
Yeah, so the big thing that usually surfaces as the week progresses is that, Wednesday or Thursday is usually when you get your major update as far as like, okay, this is where a player stands sort of thing. So yeah, make sure you're checking Wednesday and Thursday for some of these players because that's when sort of you get that update from the team that's like, okay, these are the guys that are not practicing. These are the guys that are full participants. These are the guys that were limited, those sorts of things you get on Wednesday, Thursday. Then as the weekend progresses, you get a little bit more information. But yeah, if you have no clear idea by Wednesday or Thursday, I agree with Tad. Start thinking about a plan B to figure out what you can do in case these guys can't play Monday, Sunday, whatever it is. So yeah, with Deebo, we're still unsure. It's looking like he might be able to play, but it's not guaranteed. Now, let's get to the other guy that you brought, Ted. Same offense, unfortunately. Christian McCaffrey, running back for the Niners. This one might hurt the Niners more than the Deebo injury because, yeah, Christian McCaffrey has just been such a solid piece in that offense, really making that offense go. 14 straight games with a touchdown. I mean, it's amazing what he's been doing. He scored a touchdown in the game against Cleveland, but unfortunately later in the
Thank
game,
God.
in the
Thank
third
God he
quarter,
did.
he left the game with an oblique/rib injury. It's still a little bit unsure there. He was on the sidelines. He was trying to stretch it. It looked like he was trying
that was the worst part. Sorry to interrupt you. That was the
yeah.
worst part. Is like he was getting checked out, then he was back on the sidelines. You're like, oh, he may come back in, and then like 5 minutes later, they're like, oh no, he went to the locker room, and you're like, damn it.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Ted, because it's like you see him try to work it out. So it's like there's a little bit of optimism that this isn't serious. Because if he was just sitting and the trainers were looking at him, that would worry me a little bit more. That's like, okay, this guy can barely like stand. He can't really like bend or anything like that. But this, he was like, doing some stretches. He was trying to like twist it, see if he could sort of, you know, I don't know, make it more comfortable, I guess, or whatever it was. But ultimately, like you said, they took him back to the locker room as well, and they ruled him out shortly thereafter, too. But like I said, there's a little bit of optimism that he was trying to see if he could make it work. And I think probably the Niners were trying to err on the side of caution. That's like, we want this guy for the long haul, not for this game against Cleveland, sort of thing. So, no news has come out just yet as far as the seriousness of his injury either. We don't know whether it's day to day. We don't know if it's more serious, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see exactly how this week progresses. Interesting thing though is that Elijah Mitchell didn't play as many snaps as you would think coming in place of Christian McCaffrey. And so, Tad, I'm not going to reveal your pick because I think it's a fantastic pick. I like it a lot. But we'll get to this a little bit later. But there's another guy in that San Francisco offense that I think will be a better addition to your roster compared to Elijah
I think
Mitchell.
just saying that gave away the pick, but yes, we will touch on that later.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Well, not everybody's a diehard Niners fan. Not
That's
everybody's
fair.
as
That's
deep
fair.
into fantasy football as we are. So
Because
I
I
that's
was
sort of
sitting there like, who is this guy? And
yeah. No,
we'll talk about who he is.
Honestly, I think it's a better pick. So yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later here. But just it's just unfortunately two big injuries to the Niners offense. It's not looking like they're both serious, but yeah, we'll see how the week progresses to see whether they will be able to suit up against the Minnesota Vikings on Monday. So Tad, you brought up this name a little bit earlier as well. The Chicago Bears and Justin Fields, the quarterback.
They are going to kill this kid.
Unfortunately, he left the game against the Minnesota Vikings in the third quarter. He was being tackled out of bounds. He just landed on his thumb a little bit awkwardly. It looked like it was a dislocated thumb. He was ruled out the rest of that game. We're still not sure about the seriousness of it because if a dislocation occurred and there's no damage to the ligament in the thumb, then he should be good to go. He shouldn't have any sort of issues. It's really just whether he can grip the football or not. If there's damage to the actual ligament, they may require surgery and they may keep him out a little bit longer, obviously, potentially 2 to 4 weeks up to 6 weeks potentially. But it's looking like it's not super serious, but it's looking very doubtful that he's going to play this coming week against the Las Vegas Raiders. So, I mean, if he doesn't play, Tad, I mean, we were sort of questioning this Bears offense. I think the last couple of weeks we started to see a little bit more of a resurgence. But if we have to see, I mean, we both love the story of the undrafted rookie Tyson Badgett, but if he had to lead this offense, I'm a little bit unsure about that one here, even against a very susceptible Raiders defense that's kind of weak for sure. But just he would be the step-in replacement in case Justin Fields couldn't play against the Las Vegas Raiders. But yeah, that just worries me about this Bears offense a little bit more if Tyson Badgett had to play.
I think it's a wait and see approach because there were reports coming out of camp where some people were saying that Tyson Badgett is like amazing, and I think I even brought it up in one of our preseason episodes where apparently he was going to be one of the surprise rookies. And so, from what I saw, I know his stats aren't going to really surprise a lot of people, or actually maybe surprise you in the negative way because he got beat up a lot, but none of it was really his fault. I didn't really see any bad quarterbacking. It was more bad offensive line, which has been the Bears' issue all year. So do I trust anyone on the Bears offense this week? No, but is it definite interesting, wait and see? Because like you said, if Fields has some missed extended time, I think Badgett, how you say Badgett?
Badgett, not Baggett.
Baggett, I don't know.
It's not like Bag Boy, it's Badgett.
I don't know. I was thinking more of like Baggett, that old, I guess not board game. But, yeah, Badgett, excuse me. I think that he has enough promise where it's worth keeping an eye on. Where this Bears, you're giving me a weird look.
Well, because you said there's a board game called Baggett. I've never heard of that game before.
Have you never heard of it? Oh, it's like categories. Like you have like a blue bag, and let's say I got movies. You got to write down 10 movies, and then you put them in a bag, and a team has, so like, let's say I got Moneyball, right? Our
Okay.
go-to movie. I'm not allowed to say Moneyball.
Sure.
So I got to be like baseball movie, Oakland A's, and obviously you would get that.
Got it. Right.
If I said Dark Knight, I guess you could say Batman since it's not in the title. Like Batman, but then all of a sudden there are like 6 Batman movies. I go Christian Bale, but that only narrows it down to 3. And then I could say like Joker and stuff like, oh, Baggett's great. I play it with my family every Christmas.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've never heard of this game.
Great. We're going to play that next time you're in Dallas, or next time I finally get my ass over to California.
Yeah. That should happen.
Next time, as if it ever happened in the first place. But bottom line is, I don't think this is whether it be just a 1 week injury or a couple of weeks, I don't think this is a death sentence for Chicago. No. I still see a lot of promise in Baggett, and I think that that was a great joke.
I know
that was a great joke.
There's some respect for the guy out of Shepherd. Come on,
Shepherd. Where even is Shepherd?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's Nebraska, but I could be totally off on that. Bottom line being is, it's going to be interesting to see, especially because these more inexperienced quarterbacks tend to lean on guys. So this actually, in a weird way, may increase DJ Moore and Cole Kmet's value.
Yeah. So we'll see exactly how that plays out. Now, let's get to a former Chicago Bear, and let's get to the Detroit Lions and David Montgomery. So this one's going to be interesting. So yeah, David Montgomery left the game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the middle of the second quarter with a rib injury. He was ruled out of the game shortly thereafter. News is coming out that he could miss 2 weeks potentially. The Lions are still waiting to hear for more tests. We got some more tests. He is confirmed to be out this week against the Baltimore Ravens, so he will not be playing this week. And here's the big thing too, Tad. The Detroit Lions have a bye week in week 9. And based on sort of the updates that head coach Dan Campbell was sort of giving, he said that David Montgomery is going to be out for a quote-unquote little bit. I think most likely what's going to be happening, what I saw a lot of reports as well, is that they'll keep him out this week. They'll keep him out next week. They'll have the bye week, and then he'll return the following week when they play the Los Angeles Chargers off the bye week. So he is confirmed to be out this week, but I guarantee you, or I don't think I guarantee you, but it's looking more likely that they'll keep him out next week as well and let him rest up for 3 weeks, so then he's good to go for the latter half of the season there. So this is going to be interesting, though, Tad, because rookie Jahmyr Gibbs was ruled out of this game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. So we're going to have to see about his status going forward this week as well to see whether he'll be able to play, because ultimately with David Montgomery out, then Jahmyr Gibbs will obviously see a lot more touches. Otherwise, it's going to be falling on running back Craig Reynolds. He got a lot of play with David Montgomery being out this past week, and obviously Jahmyr Gibbs being out. So yeah, this is going to be a very interesting backfield to monitor as we go through this week. But yeah, here just sort of confirming again, David Montgomery will not be playing this week in week 7 against the Baltimore Ravens. And so, Tad, I know you rostered David Montgomery in a league as well, so it probably hurts you a little bit here.
Just traded for him like 2 weeks ago.
But let's sort of like weave in some, I'm not sure about Greg Reynolds here, but I mean, just in case you want to look elsewhere, just what's another running back that you like off the week 7 waiver wire pool this week, in case you obviously, well, not in case, you have to find a replacement for David Montgomery. So who are you going to replace him with?
Well, so real quick, I just want to give my analysis on Montgomery, why this is a very catastrophic injury, is because this is the rare case where his replacement is not on waivers, because Gibbs, who, like you said, is going to come back, if not next week, definitely the week after. The problem with that is if Gibbs steps up like everyone's been waiting, for him to do, then all of a sudden I'm going to see my running back 1 start slipping into running back 2 territory, if that, or he might even be, optioned down to the flex. And so because he, couldn't defend his job. And look, I'm not saying that's unfair or anything. That's the NFL, but it just sucks because this is the type of opportunity that Gibbs can really take advantage of. Now, will he? That's a good question, because I don't know about you. He hasn't looked incredibly impressive.
Well, Ted, I was actually just about to interrupt you here, but you sort of gave me an opening here perfectly here. So I don't know if you heard some of his recent comments. This is head coach Dan Campbell I'm speaking about. But he sort of was talking about that he likes to use David Montgomery because he's a guy that can sort of tough out those tough yards when they sort of need him to. And so because of that, it sort of speaks to the fact that he trusts him more to run the ball in this offense compared to Jahmyr Gibbs. And so from what I've also read and what I've seen a little bit as well, Jahmyr Gibbs still needs to work on his pass protection. So that's going to limit his field usage as far as being on the field, even when he's fully healthy and Dave Montgomery is hurt. Like, I mean, I think we're still going to see a lot of Craig Reynolds as well in this short interim while Dave Montgomery is out. But even once Dave Montgomery returns, I don't think you need to worry as much, Laura, that Jahmyr Gibbs will take his role this year. Maybe next year, like this is a conversation for next year, but so far from what I'm seeing, they're leaning very heavily on David Montgomery, and Jahmyr Gibbs is more of like a, surprisingly, for a number 12 overall pick, a change of pace back.
Was Jahmyr Gibbs like a GM call? Do you think
where
the GM was like, no, we're taking this guy, and Campbell was like, I'm not going to use him, and like, yeah, I don't know what happened there, but there seems to be some miscommunication. And I think I still remember on draft night, I asked you, who is the most puzzling picker, who had the worst pick in the first round, and like instantly, you were like Gibbs to Detroit is so weird.
Yeah. 100%. And I mean, obviously, like I said, we found out later on, it was later, I think it was the next day or it was later that night, they traded DeAndre Swift to the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's like, okay, now it's coming into play here. But now seeing it through the season, I'm still puzzled. That's like,
Swift is killing it in Philly.
Exactly. He's killing it there. Dave Montgomery is killing it here in Detroit. So it's like, why did you draft this guy at number 12 overall when you could have addressed other positions of needs? So it's just like, did you really need to change it back at number 12 overall? You could have gotten to change it back a little bit later in the draft. So just, they
could have gotten H-N.
They could have gotten H-N 100%. So just like, I really am still trying to figure out what Jahmyr Gibbs' role is this year. Maybe next year they're still to increase his workload, but this year, like I said, I think Dave Montgomery's role is safe even once he returns. That you don't need to worry about Gibbs taking anything from him unless he absolutely blows up. Like, I mean, that's a possibility.
That's my worry.
I haven't seen it so far.
Yeah, we'll see. So, all right. So we don't really trust Gibbs. Here's a guy that I surprisingly do trust, just because I just learned about him about 24 hours ago. He's only rostered. I love it. I'm honest to God shocked that his roster numbers are this high at 1.4% on ESPN. His name is Jordan Mason. And I'm not even joking. So this is the running back, the backup running back for your San Francisco 49ers.
Third string running back.
He wears
third string running back. Make sure you put that
not anymore, apparently.
Oh yeah, we're obviously going to discuss it. It's not going to be third string, but as of right now, he is third string.
So he wears number 24, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah.
So I saw it's a number 20 running back, or like in the 20s running back. His last name is Mason. And I swear to God, this is my first reaction. I was like, is Trey Mason back in the NFL?
Trey Mason. Oh my!
I was like, oh my God. Cause I know like he had some mental health issues. So I was like, holy, like good for him. I'm like, he's back in the game. And then I Googled it. I was like, oh yeah, no, definitely not Trey Mason. Jordan Mason at what college, Amir?
That's a good one. I want to say it's Illinois.
Nope.
Yeah.
Want another guess?
You can just give it to me.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So he was signed as an undrafted free agent.
I knew he was undrafted. I did that one.
So this past year's draft, and I'm with you. You kind of mentioned earlier. I was shocked because I was having this conversation with show friend Jason Davis, who held on to Elijah Mitchell for such a long time, and then the McCaffrey news was announced. I texted him. I was like, oh. That was a good call by you. You're about to pay off. And then he texted me after the game like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Because I think we all expect Elijah Mitchell, a guy who's experienced in this offense, to step up as the lead back. Now, maybe part of it is the fact that Mitchell's coming off a 2-week absence, so maybe they wanted to kind of ease him in, especially after the McCaffrey injury. But regardless, Jordan Mason was given 5 carries. He got 27 yards on that, plus a touchdown. Interesting to note, he was not even targeted a single time in the receiving game. But at that point, you guys were you guys were going downfield though. So like,
he has absolutely no sort of stake in the passing game. He's purely a runner. So that's where Elijah Mitchell will sort of earn his sort of paycheck there. And, Cap totally understands it too. That Jordan Mason is not a pass catcher. He's a runner.
Where are your takes on Jordan Mason? Good talk.
But yeah, so it's understandable why he wasn't targeted because that's just not his game. He's a pure runner.
Right. So I think the biggest thing moving forward with this is like, honestly, I don't even care if McCaffrey is going to play this weekend. I think Jordan Mason still has flex potential because like you said, the 49ers have been doing this all season. It's maddening because it's kind of the opposite of what's been happening though, is like you guys have been killing most of your opponents. So McCaffrey gets no points, and I mean no points. Trust me, he gets no points in the fourth quarter because you've been putting in Elijah Mitchell or I guess Mason. And so I think that even if McCaffrey is quote unquote good to go this weekend, yeah, you'll play him, but there's no way he's going to get the workload he's been used to. And as long as Elijah Mitchell doesn't, for whatever reason, overcome, Mason to become the number 2 back, I think Mason's going to get a fair amount of touches. So I think that there's a real good chance that like his floor is a flex play. His ceiling, obviously being if Christian McCaffrey doesn't play, is like he's in like high tier running back 2 territory automatically just because of the offense he's in, just because of the system. I like Frank Mason a lot. Frank Mason's Frank Mason's the point guard from Kansas.
Oh, it's like, who the hell is Frank
Mason? Jordan Mason.
There you go. Yeah, Ted, it's actually funny that you brought up the Niners are usually up ahead. You look at that game last week against Dallas. Who scored a touchdown that game at the very end of the game? Jordan Mason.
Like I said,
so, it's like
5 carries, 27 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, he scored a touchdown this week against the Cleveland Browns as well. And he's a guy that he's a more powerful runner compared to Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell's more of your finesse runner. So he needs to get outside. He sort of finds the tackles and he gets out there with speed. So that's part of the reason why Kyle Shanahan doesn't use him as much, because he's dealing with a knee injury. So you got limited speed there. Whereas Jordan Mason, he's going to fight. He's going to grind. He's always going to get you positive yardage. So definitely once they get their red zone, you're going to see a lot more Jordan Mason. So you could definitely depend on this guy, even if Elijah Mitchell plays and Christian McCaffrey doesn't, or if both of them play, Jordan Mason's going to get some touches in the red zone. So very much, he's a little bit touchdown dependent, but I think depending on Christian McCaffrey's health going into Monday against the Vikings, Jordan Mason could see a lot of touches, potentially in this offense, depending on Christian McCaffrey's stats. But yeah, I like him a lot more compared to Elijah Mitchell, surprisingly.
Yeah, it's weird. It came out. I feel like it came out of nowhere, but maybe that just shows how good Frank Mason is.
I can't speak to Frank Mason, but I can definitely speak to Jordan.
He's not good. He is out of the NBA.
All right, so let's get to a former 49ers quarterback here, Tad. Let's get to Jimmy Garoppolo, quarterback with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Why?
This was interesting here. So he seemed to have suffered an injury in the final drive of the first half against the New England Patriots. He was taken to the hospital. Like at halftime.
Okay, all right. Walk me through this because I was like in the bathroom or like I was away from my TV, and all I kept hearing while like they were cut in during red zone. Sorry to interrupt, but like I am genuinely curious about this. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot to look this up. Is they kept being like, well, he's at the hospital. Hopefully he's okay, but they wouldn't say his name. So I didn't know if it was a Raiders player, a Patriots player, whatever.
No,
so
it was Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay,
yeah.
So what happened?
So I didn't see exactly what happened, and I think it's still hard to determine exactly how he got hurt, but he was visibly wincing. Like you could see that he was in pain. They took him to the sidelines, and then I guess they took him to the hospital to get better tests and just get further evaluations right then and there. But yeah, so they took him to the hospital, and he was getting his test there. They ruled him out for the game, obviously, because they drove him out there. So Brian Hoyer ended up finishing that game. Head coach, here's the interesting thing too, is that he was grimacing, so you could see that there was some visible pain there. And then head coach Josh McDaniels was asked point blank, like, who do you think is going to be your starting quarterback in this upcoming game against the Chicago Bears? And he was reluctant to name a quarterback. So I don't know whether he's reluctant to name whether it's Brian Hoyer or Jimmy Garoppolo, or whether he's reluctant to say that's Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell, or I don't know what exactly it is, but there's a mystery right now surrounding.
Talk about pick your poison. My God.
Exactly. So I don't know who's going to be starting for the Las Vegas Raiders against Chicago Bears, but that uncertainty leads me to sort of think that I don't know how much we could trust Jimmy Garoppolo this week. I mean, overall, even if he was healthy, I don't know how much I trust him in this offense anyways, but just letting you know, especially like I said, with a lot of teams on a bye week, in case you were looking for a streaming option, you got to look elsewhere besides Jimmy Garoppolo. Brian Hoyer potentially could be a serviceable start, but that's really like, everybody had to be gone off your waiver wire for you to consider Brian Hoyer. That's sort of my reasoning there. But overall, I think you want to avoid this offense this week, depending on what's happening there. If Jimmy Garoppolo plays, then maybe I could sort of see that as a streaming option. But overall, I'm not liking this offense. But here's a more interesting one, Tad. Let's get to this one because this happened in your game against the Indianapolis Colts over the weekend, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence injured his knee in that game towards the end of the game. He took a weird tackle. Samson Ebukam sort of rolled his knee a little bit. It wasn't dirty. Wasn't dirty. I want to clarify that. It was just unfortunately just the way that he tackled him. You could see that there was a little bit of a limp Trevor Lawrence had, but it wasn't a serious limp. He was just like, clearly he was favoring that knee. He was able to finish out the game. I think there's like 3 minutes left in the game anyways. But just in case, here's the big thing is that they're playing on a short week. They're playing on Thursday night against the New Orleans Saints. So if this injury sort of flares up and there's some inflammation and he just can't, get his, can't get full strength on it or anything along those lines, then there's a possibility he may not be able to play. I don't think it's going to be that serious based on everything that I saw. He was able to close out the game. Like I said, it didn't look like it was that visible of a lip. It was just more of just like, okay, it just tackled a little bit awkward. You get some ice on it. I think he'll be perfectly fine. In case he doesn't play, CJ Beathard is the backup. I don't know how much I like CJ Beathard to start this offense, but Trevor Lawrence, I think, should be perfectly fine. But we do want to highlight it because they're playing on the short week with that sort of shorter time frame, shorter turnaround time. There may be an outside chance that he misses this week, but I don't think we have anything to worry about there.
So I don't really want to even talk about like how that affects his fantasy value because yes, it drops in as it should. But what is going to be interesting is because I'm right there with you. I think he will play, but on the short week, that means it probably won't be as healed as they want it to be. So in my opinion, he just had himself a hell of a week. This boosts Travis Etienne's fantasy value.
He's had back-to-back solid weeks. He had that last week in London against the Buffalo Bills. They followed it up this week against the Indianapolis Colts. So yeah, he's been on fire right now.
So, and ride that hot streak. Like, why not? Like, keep riding the hot streak. And especially because it takes almost like literally, it takes pressure off your quarterback and that knee. So, yeah, I think this is really good news for Etienne managers.
Exactly. So, we're not liking Jimmy Garoppolo that much. I mean, we do like Trevor Lawrence, obviously. But, Tad, who's another quarterback that you like off the waiver wire? Like I said, with a lot of teams on the bye week this week, you may need a streaming option this week. So, who do you like at quarterback this week?
You got to risk it for the biscuit, buddy. I'm telling you. I named this guy a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to name him again. Jordan Love.
Okay.
He's an interesting pick for a couple of reasons. Now, let me tell you. The first reason is he's coming off a bye week. So, the main reason being is like if you're a little lower on that waiver order, if you're 7 or 8 and you're like, there's no way, I don't know, Russell Wilson, who honestly fantasy wise hasn't been terrible. But like some of the bigger names, you're like, there's no way I land him. Jordan Love, I think, is landable because you have a couple reasons. One, he's coming off a bye week. So if, whoever else is on the waiver wire is looking at the point totals, Love is going to be down on that list. 2, he's coming off easily the worst performance of his season so far, where he only had 4.7 points in his last game. But the thing is that, so there's also, and the third reason being, there's a big question now. Was that hot start a fluke or was the week before the bye week just a really bad week? I'm going to go with the latter. I actually think that this offense has a lot of fantasy potential. And on top of all of that, the Green Bay Packers play the Denver Broncos. They have let opposing quarterbacks average 20 points a game against them. Okay, so I understand that the Broncos defense is looking a little bit better, but they still suck. So I actually think that this is a perfect, like all the cards are there. You're playing a bad defense. You're coming off a bye week. You have a lot of talented and now a pretty healthy Packers offense behind you. And that was the biggest thing is they weren't healthy going into the season. Now after this bye week, hopefully they're a little healthier. This is like, it has all the ingredients for a good bounce back week. I'm rolling with Jordan Love.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid pickup this week because, like I said, the waiver wire is sort of getting a lot thinner. There's a lot of people that are rostered, and there's a lot of teams on a bye week this week. So, yeah, you're sort of looking for what's the best available. Going against a weaker Denver defense. As good as they looked against Kansas City, surprisingly, they only allowed them to score, 17 points, I think, in that game? Only
19.
1 touchdown. I know that for sure. So, yeah, so they did play well, but just, that's, 1 game out of the other 5 that they played earlier. So it's like sort of the anomaly this morning.
I remember that was Kansas City on a short week. That was a Thursday night game.
Yeah, so I like that matchup against Denver. I like Green Bay coming off a bye week. They'll be ready. They'll be healthy. Should be good to go. So, Jordan Love, an excellent pickup right there.
All right, I'm excited about your pick, though. Explain your quarterback pick.
I'll get to that, but there's still one more injury that we need to get to here because this is pretty significant. This affects the LAFB network as well. Kye Williams, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. He left the game against the Arizona Cardinals a little early, so this was towards the very end of the game. He had an ankle injury towards the end of the fourth quarter. He did not return. I think there was like some 5 minutes left in the game, so it didn't miss much. But tests have come out. Is looking like it's not a serious injury, but he is in doubt to play in this game this upcoming week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're still doing some tests, but they're very doubtful that he's going to be good to go this week. And on top of that, Tad, the backup, Ronnie Rivers, he also suffered an injury in that game. He suffered a knee injury. His is a lot more serious. He has a sprained PCL in his knee. And so this is going to force him to miss at least 2 weeks of action. So now you're missing both of your running backs. And remember, Tad, they already traded Cam Akers away to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah,
so
how much do they regret that now?
Exactly. So this is going to be a very interesting situation when they play the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they're probably going to be without Kye Williams. It's not fully confirmed, but it's looking like he's not going to be able to play. And they're 100% going to be out without, Ronnie Rivers. And so the backup now is, I guess, the TCU castoff, Zach Evans, the rookie from Ole Miss. And so he's going to get a lot of the touches in this offense. And just, I mean, Tad, I know you said you weren't a huge fan of his because obviously he couldn't, I think you said there's a running back that he couldn't beat out or whatever, but he's a TCU castoff, so he kind of like blackballed him anyway. So I just want to,
hold on.
What are your thoughts here, especially in the Rams backfield situation here? For
let me fact check you here. We did not cast him off. He left us.
Okay.
So he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was TCU's highest rated recruit ever. And he was killing it. He was a five. Again, I could be mistaken here, but I'm like 90% sure I'm right. He was a 5-star running back who committed to TCU. And so everybody was super excited. And he did really, really well his first year with us as a starter. But the problem is the team did not. So, and that was just as the NIL was becoming a thing. He wanted to transfer, which is his right. And that okay, go for it. So he went to Ole Miss. And I was like, oh, good God. Him and Lane Kiffin's offense is going to be ridiculous. Like there was talk like amongst me and my friends, like he could be a Heisman candidate. Unfortunately, after a couple weeks at Ole Miss, once the season began, he lost his job to a true freshman running back. Now, this true freshman running back, now sophomore, is really, really good. So don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh my God, like he sucked that bad. But it was interesting because I actually do wonder if the TCU system just made him look better than he is. Because it's not that he did badly at Ole Miss. Like his stats were still respectable. He did not look like the same player at Ole Miss. From the little bit I saw from him during the preseason, I liked what I saw. I think it's an interesting, if you're truly desperate, if you're in like a 12-man league where that waiver wire is just like a desert at this point, trust me, I'm in a couple. I know what you guys are looking at. It's worth an ad. But I would really only start him flex running back 2 if you're truly, truly desperate. Because I'm just this Rams offense is just not consistent, or this Rams running game, I should say, because their passing offense is way better than I thought it would be. This Rams running game, my faith in them is at an all-time low, and that's saying something.
That's fair. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting running situation there. The Steelers are coming off a bye week, so they'll be healthy and ready to go, well prepared for the Rams. Yeah, just questions in the backfield. I'm not sure what sort of running game they'll be able to establish against the Pittsburgh Steelers there. So those are all the major injuries. Let's get to the rest of our Week 7 waiver wire picks, Tad. I know you got to your quarterback, Jordan Love. I know you got to your running back in Jordan Mason, who I'm a huge fan of. Why don't you run through the rest of your picks here at the wide receiver, tight end, defense, and kicker, and then I'll get to all of my picks.
Sure. So at wide receiver, I swear to God, I'm not just being a homer. I think this guy is an actual legitimate chance to really be one of the best fantasy gets, especially the rare midseason get. So he's only rostered on ESPN currently in 32% of leagues. So he is out there for a lot of people. Unfortunately, my league is not one of them, which is really upsetting. It's Josh Downs. He's available, again, in 32% of leagues.
I'm a fan of Josh Downs, yep.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, what is the one thing I always look for in wide receiver stats?
Targets. Volume.
Targets. Over the last 4 weeks, he has seen 29 targets.
I should also add in the fact that Alec Pierce is currently hurt. So that's sort of adding to the fact that Josh Downs is getting a lot more targets as well. But hey, like we've said this so many times before, it's a very common cliche in the sports industry. Best type of ability is availability. And so that's exactly what Josh Downs has right now.
And it's funny because I knew there was a specific play yesterday against the Jags where he ran not even a complicated route. It was basically just like a crossing route, a very shallow crossing route. And he caught it and then broke it off for like 30 yards. I'm like, God, that looks familiar. And I remembered who our coach was. It's Shane Steichen. Basically, Josh Downs is our Devonta Smith. I'm not saying he's that good, but he's serving the same role. Exactly. Of like, create space. Once you get him that space, he can make do with it. And that was my biggest concern with Downs is can he, function essentially in that space? And yes, he can. He absolutely can. So let me tell you, Amir, like the Colts, especially if Anthony Richardson, we didn't bring him up because technically it's not an injury that happened this week, but there's a possibility Anthony Richardson may miss the rest of the season. If that is the case, we are going to be down a lot, which means a lot of passing opportunities. Did you see how many attempts Minshew had last night or yesterday?
I think it was like 47, if I remember correctly.
55.
Right? 55. Jeez. Okay.
So trust me.
One play, yeah.
We're going to be passing it a whole hell of a lot. So I think that Josh Downs is going to just continue to become a bigger and bigger part of this offense. And I think that he is an absolutely valuable pickup. I mentioned that, like, I remember, I won't say everything, but I remember a lot of from this past draft night. And one of the most funny things I remember was, especially on day 2, with every single pick, I kept on being like, it should be this guy. It should be this guy. It should be this guy. And by like round 2, pick 10, you were so done with me. You were just like, would you stop saying this guy's name? And I think you were happy he was off the board just so I would stop that. It's Michael Mayer. Yeah. I was a huge fan of this guy going into the draft. I'm still, I was wondering what happened to him. So through the first 4 weeks, exactly. So was Cap. He's tuning in to see what did happen to Michael Mayer, Cap. So he only had 2 total targets through the first 4 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, he's now gone up to 9. And a couple interesting stats. He's had over, because it's like barely, it's like 17.1. But he's had over 17 yards per reception ever since this like 2-week resurgence has started. And here's the real stat where I was like, okay, this is interesting because for some reason, Austin Hooper was getting more snaps than him to start the season, which is why he wasn't really doing all that well. This past weekend against the Patriots, he being Michael Mayer, played 82% of the snaps on the Raiders offense. So I think that like Michael Mayer with that production, with taking advantage of the opportunity, I think he's here to say he is a sneaky, sneaky good pickup at the tight end position. With defense, speaking of sneaky, this team stuck right in the top 10 fantasy defenses. I had no idea. The Seattle Seahawks, the number 8 ranked fantasy defense going into next week. That's crazy.
I think part of that is skewed because they really racked up a lot of points against
I'll touch on that. Because you are.
They get like 10 sacks in that game plus the pick 6 by Devin Witherspoon.
You are absolutely correct.
They're still a good defense.
My very next note on the Seahawks defense, they are a hit or miss.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. That is on my very next note. But when they hit big, they hit big.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have 2 10-plus point performances against the Giants and against the the Panthers. Point being is, though, I know what people are saying, well, it's week 7. What do we care about 2 good performances? Their bye week was last week. Yep. So they're one game down from everybody else. So yes, they are a hit or miss. To be fair, they had 1, 3, and I believe this week was 6 points. So, I mean, this week was fine. The other couple are concerning. But they go against the Arizona Cardinals, who, look, I predicted that they weren't going to lose a step. Woo! That was a bad prediction by me. They lost a step. They're missing James Conner big time. The Arizona Cardinals we saw against the Los Angeles Rams this past weekend, those were the Cardinals we thought we'd be seeing all season. So I think that without James Conner, I have zero faith in this Arizona Cardinals offense to be functional. And that is unfortunately who they play is the Seattle Seahawks. I think this is going to be a hit week for them. I'm not predicting 27 points like they had against the Giants, but I am predicting at least 8 or 9, which is a solid streamer.
I'm thinking double digits. I think it's safe to say 10.
It's totally possible. And then finally, kicker, one of the few bright spots on my team is Matt Gay. This dude's automatic. He's only missed 1 field goal all season. And if you ignore it, I know this is a big if, but if you ignore that outlier that was the Rams game where he scored 0, other than that game, he's now 3 straight games with 10-plus points. So I think that Matt Gay, and now with Gardner Minshew seemingly in the driver's seat going forward, this reeks of an offense. I know I say this every week, but I'm telling you, this is the way to get a good kicker is an offense that can get in enemy territory without closing the deal. And that, look, take it from a fan, that is the very definition of the Colts offense with Gardner Minshew. So I think Matt Gay is going to finish as a top 5 kicker, by the time the season's done. He is available. Let me look up the numbers real quick. He is available in just over 52% of ESPN leagues. So he is still widely available. I'm telling you, he won't blow you away with his point totals, but you can always count on him for a lot of point totals. And for me, I'm looking for consistency, not, who's the big scorer.
All right. So just to run down your picks, we got Jordan Love at quarterback. We got Jordan Mason at running back, Josh Downs at wide receiver, Michael Mayer at tight end. Defense, we got the Seattle Seahawks, and kicker, we're closing it out with Matt Gay. So yeah, pretty solid picks there in week 7 here.
And if you want something super sneaky,
go for it.
Put Michael Mayer as not waiver priority number 1. Put him lower as number 2, because I'm telling you, I don't think he's going to be that high on too many people's waiver requests. So that's how you can land, let's say, Jordan Love and Michael Mayer in the same foul swoop.
There you go. Solid advice. So let's go through my picks here, Tad. I'm going to start at quarterback. I'm going to go with Sam Howell of the Washington Commanders. He's currently rostered in 19.1% of ESPN leagues and 38% of Yahoo leagues, so he's widely available. Howell has scored at least 18 fantasy points in 3 straight games now, Tad. With the plethora of teams on a bye week this week, I think you could get a very good streaming option in Sam Howell for the Commanders. They travel to play the New York Giants in New York this week. I think this is a very good matchup. The Giants are giving the 5th most points in the NFL and the 4th most yards. You look at just what they're doing under Eric Bieniemy. I think their offense is starting to sort of get into a rhythm here. They look pretty good this past week against the Atlanta Falcons. So I think this is a very good matchup for him against a very susceptible New York Giants team. Getting to the running back position, I know we're sort of downplaying the Bears offense, but I actually like this pickup because of the potential issues at the quarterback position. I think they may lean more heavily on the running game. So I'm going to say pick up Roschon Johnson of the Chicago Bears. Currently rostered
for that trap again.
He's currently rostered at 41.8% at ESPN leagues and 52% at Yahoo leagues. A little bit, about 50% or so in both there. He didn't play last week against the Minnesota Vikings. He was dealing with concussion. But I think he should be able to clear protocol this week against the Las Vegas Raiders. We already talked about the Las Vegas Raiders not having the greatest defense, so I think this is an advantage that this is a matchup, that he could take advantage of. Khalil Herbert, he's on the IR. He's going to be out for a few more weeks at least. They got Deontay Foreman, but he didn't really separate himself as far as like, okay, this is a guy that can sort of lead the charge. He did good, but not great. And so, yeah, you now insert Roschon Johnson, the rookie that they drafted in the 4th round out of Texas. So I think if he could sort of come in and separate himself in that backfield, he could sort of earn a lot of the touches going forward while Khalil Herbert is out. Even once Khalil Herbert comes back, maybe he could sort of take the lead role in this backfield. It may be a little bit dicey, but I'm willing to sort of roll the dice on this one in this backfield with Justin Fields potentially being out. If Justin Fields is healthy, I like this matchup that much more. So I think 100% you go with Roschon Johnson. But I think if he's out and they have to go with Tyson Bagent, they may lean on the running game more. So I like Deontay Foreman, but I like Roschon Johnson a little bit more this week. So Roschon Johnson, yeah, maybe I'm falling for the trap, Tad, but I think I'm liking sort of the matchup here against the Las Vegas Raiders.
The circumstances line up. It's just, like we kind of talked about, it's like, for me, it's wait and see on Chicago. I say give Roschon Johnson another week, but if he does live up to your expectations, and granted, this is a risky run, is kind of like what you were talking about with Rashee Rice. Good call, by the way, because that is exactly what's happening.
Where he's coming back to, and our good friend of the podcast, Chauncey Talese, I complimented him. I was like, somebody listen to the pod. He's like, I know I listen from time to time because I played him this week in our LAFB Fantasy Football League. Who did he start at one of the wide receiver positions? Rashee Rice, and he got him 11 points, and he's on his way to a victory after the close of tonight. So, I mean, yeah.
Oh, wait. Whatever happened if you lose against Chauncey? I'm going to roast you on the podcast.
Was that one of the bets? I don't think that
it wasn't a bet. It was a threat from you being like, if you lose to Chauncey last week.
Yeah, and you did lose to him.
I did. Now the cows come home.
I forgot about it though. So, but I did. You could have won. That's the bigger thing. Fair. You could have won. I had no chance of winning.
For all my students listening, that is the very definition of poetic justice.
Oh gosh, but yeah. So I like Roschon Johnson this week, but yeah, it pays to listen to us because
good for Chauncey. Holy Chauncey, stop listening to this podcast.
All right, let's get to the receiver position here, Tad. I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders receiver here, Tad. So I'm playing that stack with Sam Howell in case you can pick up both these guys.
Double down in it.
Curtis
Right.
Samuel. Yeah, roster
Oh, he looks so
28.6% of
good.
ESPN leagues and 34% of Yahoo leagues. So you can pick up this guy. So over the last 3 weeks, Tad, Samuel has been tearing it up for the Commanders offense. He has scored a touchdown in all 3 games. He has a 89% catch rate. He has caught 17 of his 19 targets. So this guy is catching everything that's thrown his way. He is ranked as the 9th best fantasy wide receiver in that span. So he is in the top 10 over the course of these last 3 weeks alone. I already talked about how I like Howell as a good streaming option this week, but why not get the stack and pick up Samuel as well in case you need a receiver? Like, hey, there may be one Samuel that may not be playing this week. Why don't you get another Samuel to replace him in Curtis Samuel? So I think this would be a good stack to pair him up with Sam Howell. Samuel just offers long-term viability, whereas like I like Sam Howell as like maybe a streaming option. Potentially could use him in future weeks, but Curtis Samuel, the way he's looking in this offense, I think he's finally sort of utilizing the skills that we anticipated him utilizing in Carolina. And with the trade coming over to Washington, we just thought this was happening a lot sooner. Now it's starting to emerge under Eric Bieniemy. So yeah, Curtis Samuel is looking really good in this offense. Pick up this guy before it's too late. So yeah, 100% go get Curtis Samuel. I think it's a great ad.
No, 100%. You look at, and this guy I just sent off my roster weeks ago because I saw this coming, was Terry McLaurin has only eclipsed 15 points once this season. And I think Curtis Samuel is a big reason why. Is just because for whatever reason, the way this offense is moving, it's moving through Curtis Samuel when it comes to the passing game. So take advantage of that right now because what was his roster numbers again?
He is rostered in 28.6% of ESPN leagues and 34% of Yahoo leagues. So
for how productive he is, those are insanely low.
Exactly.
It will not be for long.
100%. 100%. This next pick, Tad, at the tight end, and we've always talked about the tight end sort of being like a little bit of a crapshoot, a little bit of just like, you don't know what's going to happen here. So this is more of like a lottery ticket. This is a dart throw pick for me, but I'm liking his usage numbers the last couple of weeks that I'm anticipating maybe he'll get more involved. This is Luke Musgrave, the tight end for the Green Bay Packers. So he is rostered currently in 17.4% of ESPN leagues and 19% of Yahoo leagues. So he's widely available as well. Through 5 weeks of action, Tad, the Packers was just on a bye week, so that's why it's only 5 weeks as opposed to 6 weeks. He has tallied 18 receptions. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This is why I like it more as a dart throw this week. Of those 18 receptions, 13 of them have come in the past 3 weeks. So he is starting to get used a lot.
It's the Michael Mayer syndrome.
A little bit, yeah, exactly. And I've always said, I said this when we were in the summer, we were talking about like tight ends and just other positions. I was like, rookie tight ends, they take a while to sort of get the offense to emerge. And so, yeah, this is taking a little bit of time. So hopefully with the bye week, maybe the Packers decide to install some, more packages for this guy. Jordan Love's able to build up a little bit more chemistry with this guy. But clearly over the past 3 weeks before the bye week, it seems like Jordan Love was looking his direction a little bit more. So I like the fact that maybe this will continue outside of the bye week. And like I said, everybody's healthy. There's just an extra weapon in this passing offense that Jordan Love can use. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but just like I said, as a dart throw, this guy could potentially look pretty good in this coming week and possibly in the future as well, especially with him so being widely available. It's worth a shot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, Ted, I got 2 more for you. I got my defense and my kicker. So I'm going to start with the defense that totally controlled the game against the San Francisco 49ers. The Cleveland Browns, they're only rostered in 53.1% of ESPN leagues.
I'm sorry, you mean Sack City?
They didn't get that many sacks against San Francisco.
They didn't get that many, but dude, the amount of pressure this line gets is crazy.
100%. You are correct there. They got 100%, a lot of pressure for sure. Dalvin Tomlinson was living in the backfield against the San Francisco 49ers. They looked strong all over the place. They allowed the 49ers to score only 17 points on offense. This is a team that scored 30 points in at least 30 points in every single game this season.
Best offense in the league.
Facing the Colts, unfortunately, Tad, in week 7. And so I don't know if they're going to present as
We're going to die.
San Francisco did. I'm liking them to put up a lot of good numbers there. Like I said, like you sort of mentioned earlier, Tad, Anthony Richards is definitely going to be out. There's potentially maybe out for the season, but Gardner Minshew is going to be airing it out a lot. And Cleveland has a pretty stiff secondary. They're going to get some good pass rush on him. They're going to get after the quarterback, low yardage, low points. This is a sign for good streaming option in the Cleveland defense there. And lastly, I want to bring up the kicker here, Brandon McManus of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Rostered
I feel
only
like we brought him up like 5 weeks in a row at this point.
I don't think we have. I was a big proponent of him in the preseason. I really liked him
Is
as
that what
your
it is?
season long
Okay.
kicker. Yeah, I was a big proponent for him. He hasn't been as strong throughout the season, but he finally had a really good week last week. He had 17 points against your Indianapolis Colts. He's rostered only 17.1% of ESPN leagues and 26% of Yahoo leagues. Like I said, they're playing on a short week against the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints present a pretty good defense, so I think this could be a very back and forth game. Defensive, possibly. We'll see exactly what happens with Travis Etienne, whether he can have another successful week or not. But just, yeah, I could see some good opportunities for Brandon McManus to get double-digit points at the kicker position. So I like him as a good add this week on the short week. Could be a good streaming option for you. So
I mean, I wouldn't say he's been, what was the word? Strong. He's just been,
all right.
He's been inconsistent. Yeah. It's like what I said earlier is like when it's with the Seahawks defense, it's like when he hits big. So that's just the whole thing is like, whenever the Jags offense decides to actually live up to the potential, he thrives.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem too. You said inconsistent with Brandon McManus. That's been the Jaguars offense pretty much this entire season too. It's like now we're starting to see things starting to click for them. So yeah, maybe this could be the rest of the season. Brandon McManus could be a solid streaming kicker, as well as that offense can be a little bit more reliable as well. So yeah, we'll see exactly how this all plays out. But those are our picks here for week 7 off the waiver wire. I know it's sort of getting a lot thinner. Tad and I are here to give you the best advice that we can give you with that thin waiver wire. But yeah, please, if we get to a player that we haven't brought up and you need some advice on whether you should pick up a guy, you see us down below. You got the ticker right down below. Make sure you interact with us on our social media handles. You got us on Twitter. You got me at Under the Side 23. You got Tad at Tad Side 94. You got the show handle at The Side Guys. And of course on Instagram on The Side Guys as well. Interact with us. Send us your questions, however specific it may be, how general it may be. If you don't want to ask a question, like you could DM us. It's all widely available on both platforms. So make sure you interact with us when it comes to start sits, when it comes to waiver wires, when it comes to trades. Because I mean, depending on the league that you play in, trade deadlines may be starting to creep up in the next couple of weeks here. So I mean, you won't be able to make any trades. So if you're trying to make a push for a playoff spot, you may need some trade advice, and I know Tad's got your back for sure because he makes a trade pretty much every week, it seems like.
Literally just made one last night.
So, I mean,
Dallas Goddard, welcome to the Side Guys.
Exactly. So make sure you're interacting with us. We're here to help you out. We're here to help you win some championships and win your fantasy leagues for sure. Also, make sure you subscribe wherever this to your podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can listen right on the LAFB Network website as well. Ton of options for you. Just hit that subscribe button so you're always up to date with our podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well so you're always up to date with our YouTube content. And please make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the pro level and the Bruins and the Trojans at the college level. So yeah, they're giving a lot of great content when it comes to LA football, and lots of other great content as well. But guys, to everybody who's already interacted with us on social media, who's watching our videos, who's listening to our podcast, who's interacting with us on social media, asking us questions, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing, guys, we really can't thank you enough.
And just keep remembering whether or not it is midweek injuries where all of a sudden, I think this happened with Brandon Ayuk or some player on my roster where I was like, he was fine. And then I came home from work on a Wednesday and all of a sudden he was questionable. And I'm like, what happened? Well, I know we do this episode before Wednesday for obvious reasons, before the waiver wire hits. But if there is injury news after this episode drops, like Amir said, hit us up on socials. Trust me, this is my obsession. I keep up with as much news as I can, and I keep up with the best possible replacements as best as I can. So, and Amir does the exact same thing. So be sure to keep check in with us. It's not because just because this episode dropped, we're done checking. We check throughout the week. So be sure to check that. Be sure to check out our Saturday episodes where we tell you the best bets, the best start sit picks, and everything else in between. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcast, thank you so much for listening. And please, as always, everyone, stay safe.